What up, old Uncle 2? Back with you once again. All right, let's just get right into it for this week's weekly update. A lot going on in Bitcoin, so I'm going to recap last week very briefly, talk about S&P, what we might be able to expect out of it this week, and then sort of focus the rest of our time on Bitcoin today. Not going to take up too much of your time. So let's start with Meta. We talked about last week. We saw it in the reaction zone, and we noted that the reaction at the 618 was highly significant and that we would expect some follow through to the move. We have not had that yet, although we are seeing, and you might catch this as a theme, we're seeing signs of that that bottom, that bounce coming. And again, remember, there were more bearish and more bullish options we talked about in that bounce. So be sure to go back and review to see what the options are for you there. But just that the idea of a, let's say, a significant rally, depending on what your definition of significant it is, but we should be getting a bounce here. And if you're a bull, you're going to certainly hope that you return back to that channel at the very least. If you're a bear, you're probably going to want to reject off of it or maybe not even make it there. Pretty good chance of making it to the base of that channel. All right, flipping back to AMD to talk about where we were with them last week. Last week, we had said that we would expect the top of this base channel to hold the line, and that if we returned back into it, that we would expect that we could potentially come back, fill this gap, test these previous lows, if not worse. Sort of as expected, it at least held up for now. If we can continue on to the upside or to the sideways and return to this channel in a sideways manner, that would be less concerning for me. At the moment now, that is just a very positive point for the AMD bulls that we have held serve. I would say we're still going to probably end up chasing that thing again. But for now, positive sign. And overall, if I had to be an odds maker on this, I would say maybe we trend sideways into the channel a bit before we do continue to the upside. Just my guess. All right. S&P 100, S&P 500. As I had mentioned to you guys, that there's just this like level out here hanging out that just feels unresolved to me. And after we did get we had that, what I would say on last Sunday I said was likely a 1 or an A developing. I would say that we ended up getting a what we'd call a three-wave move whenever there's gaps in the market like this, and then I always like to consider that, and you continue on in this sort of way, that you would have gotten your fill here. So this was our three-wave to the upside. Of course, we broke all of the, let's say we broke the 618, broke the MZ, I think we got all the way right to the 786, and maybe just marginally even broke that. Marginally broke the 786. So what happened? Then we put in a impulsive wave to the downside. Well, maybe this was a flat. It's like, not really, probably not. That's not something that I would feel good about calling that a flat. I would maybe call it a diagonal, completed diagonal with not a diagonal. This would have been the diagonal. I would call it potentially a zigzag with a truncation, but that's like probably the formation and pattern that is completely legal. But you just don't see. You just never see. So probably wouldn't want to call it that. What it's more turning into feeling is, that it's certainly a complex sideways, right? This is only one potential so far. Maybe we go up, turn something into like that. Possibly. Who knows? This would wrap up as something like a W, X, Y. I mean, there's a lot of options on the table right now, pretty much all of them. But this is a weekly look ahead, right? So we're going to talk a little bit bigger picture on Bitcoin. I don't want to talk on the S&P too much, but where is this for? Has it been put in yet? No, I would say. If anything, you just keep moving it one pivot to the side for now. But we won't even place it there definitively. What we will say is that, especially because we've just been continuing on in this way for the last couple months now, threes. Well, what is this? this is an impulse. So again, just like last week when we had this move and we predicted that there would be continued move to the upside during the week, like this one, we're going to predict that same thing again. Why? Well, same reason we did last week. We have the impulsive move off of the low. Would very much like to see a good quality 3-wave down on like last week that you could potentially take a long on. But then again, you know, and if you listen to any of my videos for any amount of time, you'll know this about me. I bet the C. I don't bet the 3. But in this instance, I'd really bet the C just because, again, we've moved in threes. So, oops, that looks a little better. Threes. Maybe this is turning out into some sort of triangular formation, even though we seem to have started. I highlighted that it would have been a triangle maybe after a flat Y or W, I should say. Not really. The beautiful thing about me and Elliott Wave is I'm not really that. I don't really care that much to predict the long drawn out backflip move. As you've probably heard me say, I prefer to identify when things are completed and take advantage of what I know that I can take advantage of in a probable way, just like we did with the continued move to the upside last week. I would say that would be the idea this week, is that we could take a continued move to the upside this week. You could remember everything that I always say, even if I identify something as like the probable outcome. Probabilities, nothing I say is ever 100% probability, and you know that. So, but I think that pretty good chance to predict here that we're going to have a continued move to the upside this week in some sort of a fashion of a C. If it resolves before the end of the week, maybe we even get the down move like we did last week. See how it plays, or do we finally break out and get to the upside, which would be interesting to me. Just to be honest, I won't predict that. I'm again sticking to the C as the primary expectation, just because this doesn't feel resolved unless we're going to allow for an illegal flat, and that would be a flat followed by a flat. Wouldn't like that. With a double for the WXY, double sideways. It's just not really how they typically work, or a zigzag with a truncation. Let's just go ahead and check the candles one more time. Yeah, not my favorite. All right, we'll go back to the line. Cool. Moving past the S&P, weekly outlook, I'm going to look for continued upside. Not to mention, and getting into Bitcoin, we want to talk about this too. We've got the government opening back up. The Treasury General account's been built up to over $1 trillion. All of the macro liquidity factors that could turn on a little bit this week. We'll probably do another video for the members on that because I only make videos for the public about the Elliott Wave. All right, so jumping into Bitcoin. Last week, we didn't want to disregard this reaction on the CME at this Andrews line and the horizontal area of support from this prior wave 4, but we broke it. We ended up bouncing significantly, as you would, and then we have broken it significantly. So I even drew out last week, I'll bring up the picture, that I was expecting more. I would have probably liked to see more downside, but I drew it out more like this. And this would have been the Bitcoin chart on Coinbase, where that reaction line was quite a bit deeper, as opposed to the one on the CME I was just showing you. However, we can see that, you can't see it from here, but we've broken, we showed a typical fifth wave here, right? But as we see in Bitcoin and the S&P all the time, is that particularly towards the end of corrections, you can get sort of these like extended scary moves, right? And hopefully that's what is happening here. Let's zoom out. People are asking me about this. I've got a few questions about this trend line over the past couple weeks, really. But yeah, this is on log, by the way. If this breaks, that's not bullish for anybody's outlook, I don't think. And to be quite honest, the way that we are on some confluence, we'll talk about in a bit, I would hate to see it break this. But I mean, it's not like it's the only trend line in the world that bulls need to care about. If you go out of log, you redraw it, it goes way down here, and then of course you can draw a few more where you're using different lows. So I mean, trend lines are nice and all, but there is a level of subjectivity, and what do you think the importance there is? And I don't, I do Elliott Wave, so I don't like things that are subjective. You might think I say jokingly, but no, I'm serious. Because if you follow the theory of Elliott wave, there's very little subjectivity in there, at least as taught in the school of EWI, right? Okay, so let's zoom in. Let's talk about the details that we have here. So basically, we haven't broken this, and we're going to leave this on the chart here for a nice little additional confluence factor. But we would like to not break it. However, we've got the golden corner pocket here with basically the same setup as last week, except for now we're actually making, and I think I might even talked about this last week, is that we weren't making the bottom of that corrective. So like my favorite place to take risks is at the intersection of potential count resolution and confluence factors such as a corrective base channel bottom or top, depending on which way you're going, and other confluences. Here, the golden corner pocket. And we also see this little 1-to-1 puppy on there. That would be to draw if it were, in fact, an extended fifth wave. So if we were to draw this out, we'll change colors so you can see this one better. Let's go to yellow. It'll probably show up pretty good. So clearly, right? We have these 5 waves, right? And now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves playing out. That doesn't mean that this is absolutely resolving or resolved, right? This could very well just be a 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and we're ready to break out of this gloriously. And there's a lot of people that I know, and that a lot of you people listening to this video know, that will always bet on that we will break confluences and do it gloriously. But typically, when you bet on these sort of things, or I should say, typically when you see these sort of things, the vast majority of the time is that they're going to maintain that way, right? They're going to respect it, and you'll get reaction. There are far more zigzags in any market on a given time frame than there are impulsive waves, if you just go through and count it. So when you think of that, that means that these corrective base channels are respected far more often than they are not. They break out typically in an impulse on the third of the third. And this first air quote of the third didn't even get close to the base of it. So let's see, actually, let's jump on candles. Oh, it did get close. Okay. So it's sort of been respecting, but of course you would have to draw this out that way. So then there's actually a little more room to the downside. So we're just going to leave it to the line. Again, we're not trying to necessarily pick the exact dollar here, based on this conversation, but we'll do that on our own time with all kinds of different looks. So in any event, what we have here is this potential, and again, I just told you the more bearish potential is that this is actually just a 3 to the outside. So we're going to look for that, and if it breaks this big trend line confluence, we're probably pretty bearish. However, there's been scenarios in this bull run where we've flipped bearish intermittently based on that trend line breaking, like certain trend lines breaking, like that one there, right? That we said, okay, it looks like potentially the top is in when this broke, right? But it didn't, or it wasn't. Same, right? Where we said, okay, this is looking like it could very well. We've gotten so far extended on this wave that maybe we will. However, we were able to confidently buy in here because of the way that we focus on the price action on the hard right edge, and it was corrective. Just like this over here has the very much potential to be, because of another thing is the 3-wave high that we flagged last week as an important factor in consideration, right? So we've got that 3-wave high. And then we have all these points of confluence. And we do have, within this impulsive wave, if we're going to focus on the volume here, where's the most volume? It's picking up right here in this extended 5th wave, right? And then, of course, what are we? We're out here on the daily. Let's look at the RSI. So assuming, right, that we're not going to call the end to the order of the way things have been for the last few years, which will come, right? But I don't call things until we break. I don't call the end of a trend until it's over, right? Until we see it break the trend. So assuming that it doesn't, not to mention, where else can you take a binary coin flip? what such a good opportunity here. Okay, let me put some risk on the table. Oh, we got through here. All right, risk off. Anyway, and this is a daily chart. So anyway, once we get down to the RSI 30 level, it's been respected all along this bull run, especially since we've been sort of more advanced into it. We have briefly broken through it on a few different occasions. So we could potentially do that here, and then we get green and go. We're not green yet on the daily, right? And we haven't broken through the 30, but we're in the area that should necessarily be respected. In the area that necessarily should be respected, right? Another thing to think about. Now let's just go ahead and get down and talk about what's it going to do this week too. All right, so as of right now, this is down to the 4 hour. We have on the RSI, we have 1 pivot, 2 pivot, 3 pivot of the RSI worth of divergence. Put that on yellow. And then here, we'll just go ahead and say that pivot in price, this pivot in price, and now putting in potentially this one. And then if you look on the, you can go to a lower time frame, the 1 hour or lower, and we can see here that we're putting in even more. We're just going to go ahead and grab the paintbrush instead, make this easy. Is even here on the 1 hour, 2 more points of divergence, right? Where lower low on the price, higher low on the RSI, and we are flashing green. And we can see here, down here on the 1 hour, that we have potentially, even if you want to call it 1, 2, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this could potentially be, this could potentially only be a 4 bounce coming. And again, how do we get into that daily flashing green, you know, just below that 30 RSI? Maybe we do need to put in a 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and then 4, putting in 5th, then 4, then 5th, and then bounce up. So that's sort of what I'm thinking, is that it's gonna just, it's gonna make you think that possibly, okay, this is it, before it actually is it. And maybe, just maybe, because it loves drama, we break through this to a bit and come down to this level and bounce out, because seeing the 5th get a little bit extended with an extended 5th potential is very much part of the expectation. So I don't think that it's going to be exactly an easy call week, but and we're not gonna, but I do believe that there's a potential that we could find our bottom this week, especially with if the liquidity levers come back on, as we hope that they will, from Washington. And I'm not going to tell you that if we broke this trend line, that's it, it's over, right? So think of it as sort of like rubber bands. We should still at least get some sort of bounce off of it if we do get to it. I think a scare going through to cause some sort of capitulation that would give us a real nice volume spike at the low. That could be good. So that's sort of what my thinking is for this week. Not necessarily predicting that this happens, but I am predicting that at least overnight here, by the time you probably see this tomorrow, unless you're going to watch it tonight with the OGs, that will probably have resolved to the upside with another move on the way down to come. All right, boys. Talk to you next week. Toot out.